Hello, it's Rich Rosen, founder and CEO of Fastcall, and I'm going to talk for a few minutes about two different capabilities, our dial by list and our call goals. It is March 2020, and this will be an update for some and might be a new overview for others. So I'm looking at the lead in Lightning, Fastcall's here in the utility bar, um, and we're going to start with a call. Uh, Call starts. Hello, hello. Took some notes. Great chat. Right. Let's uh, end the call. And I'm going to close my task and let's say spoke to decision maker. So there's a few things that are going to happen here, and one of them is pretty new. So we're going to create a call record, and you'll see actually that two things happen. So the call that I just made was created as a completed call, and it's here. But there's also a second call that was created at the same time that is a planned call. Um, let's look at well, let's look at the planned call record first. So if I look at the planned call record first, you'll see that it is a planned call with the start time of 3/4, which is tomorrow, and it will be call number 2. Um, and let's pop back over to the record that I called from. Where are you? Where's the record that I called from? Pop over here and look at it this way. There we go. So here's the test record that I called from, and you'll see that um, we've also added a new Lightning component to the page called My Planned Calls. We did this in the most recent, it'll be in the most recent update, but you'll see that Salesforce allows one related list per object, so we have a related list for calls. Um, on my page layout for lead, and all this is going to be very customized in your org. But we created another component where we could separate out your planned call. So even though you are going to see your planned call here in the custom object for calls, and this is a related list for calls, we've created a new component that'll just enable you to visually see. So if you had 10 or 15, or if you had a lot of calls here, this is always going to separate out that planned calls. And when you are calling from the planned call, you're going to dial from here. So when you dial from your planned call here, Fastcall will see that as a planned call, um, and we will treat it as such. So I can say, hello again, end the call, spoke to decision maker, um, and we will then say that that planned call was made, and we're going to schedule another planned call. So what we're going to do is we're going to see the series of calls here. So now that planned call was completed. So the first planned call that I made was completed. The second call that I made was also completed because I called from the planned call record, so call number 7976. And you'll see here that this call is going to have some additional custom fields that you're going to add to your page layout. So for example, it tells you that it was the call goal number 2. It was planned for tomorrow, and I happen to have made it today. So it's going to show the day that it was planned and the date that it was actually started. So for example, if I actually did make this call on the 5th, um, we would report that this call was made one day after it was planned. So some new custom fields here on the object for calls, a planned start time, a start time and end time, a call goal number is here. You always a good idea to update your page layouts with each new fast call release. Salesforce does not let us edit a page layout, even for a custom object like call to our custom object. We can create the page layout when the application is first installed, but after the first install, we cannot edit the page layout. So there's some other fields um, on this page layout, which might be new or relatively new, a reply call. It's actually related to similar idea for the planned call. Reply call is a reply to a missed call. There's a new checkbox for after hours calls, which is tied to the time of day IVR to designate a call as after hours. And this after hours is not necessarily related to the actual time of the call, though it sort of is, but it's tied to the specific call routing in the IVR. Um, so for the time of day. So it's always a good idea to take a look at what might be new in your page layout. I'm going to pop back over to the record for to the record that we just called. And let's see here. We go to the Okay, and you'll see here that we're back on that record that I first called, the test record. You'll see here that we now show 2 completed calls and a planned call. In this case, this will be the next planned call, which is scheduled here. As a matter of fact, let's refresh that page. Okay, so I wanted to show you just real fast how I did. Now, this is all source managed in Salesforce, but and even more so in Lightning, um, our page layouts are all very different. Classic, we sort of usually kind of knew what the page layout would look like. Lightning highly customized, so your page layout is going to look extremely different. This is our custom object for calls. Activities are here, so this is a Salesforce activity. Um, you may still be looking only at activities for your call records. We've built this new planned call and call goals idea, which I'm going to continue to describe around our custom object for calls, which I have in my page layout. So in this particular page layout, we have both the Salesforce task, which we're using anyway, and calls. This is the new component, my planned calls. So um, you'll see that in as a custom Lightning component, which you would drag into your page layout. So that's here. Okay, so let's go back. All right, so how did we get here? And I'm also going to talk about um, dial by list, which is related to these goals and planned calls. So we've had call goals for a while, and this is an area that we've been really eager and wanting to work on, and we're really focusing on that this year for 2020. So there are 2 different types. I skipped through that a little too fast. There are 2 different types of goals. A record count is per user or per group. So it could be 600 calls for a monthly goal for the user. For me, I can be in a group, and it can be goals per group, and then you can sort of track users and their progress against that. Against that goal. You will see in the application itself, we're showing these goals here. So I'm doing great, right? 4 calls out of my 600 goal. If I had a group goal, you would see here it is. Group goals would see here. I didn't set that up, but you could have both. So that's the first set of goals, which is goals per month for the user in the group. And then the second set, which is what we're really talking about here, is the goals per record. So I set a goal of 5 calls in 5 weeks. And of course, this could be whatever we set it as. But the idea is that there's multiple touch points in a fixed period of time. We're going to schedule this out for you. So after the first call, you schedule the next call on 1 day, which would be tomorrow. After that, 5 days. After that, 13 days. We didn't do this as day 1, day 5, day 13, day 16. We did this as plus 1 day, plus 5. So all this together should add up to your 5 weeks is the whole point. So you can say 5 calls in 5 weeks. We're going to spread that out for you. You can edit this if you want something more specific, but what's going to happen is after you've completed your first call, it's going to schedule a new planned call for you. And all this is based upon criteria that you set here. So there are a few different filters for the criteria, the accomplished criteria, the failed criteria. In the accomplished criteria, you can use call results or record field values. Call results are, as you would expect, I've accomplished my goal if I had a conversation. We have that twice. If I've scheduled a meeting or presentation, this is a sort of a demo work. We've got some duplicates here, but the idea is that we'd say we met the goal. We don't need to call 5 times because on call number 2, we met our call result and it's here. Um, those are the met criteria. These are for record field values. Oh, I thought I had one here. I'm going to, well, good opportunity to add one. I'm going to come in here. I'm going to say on the lead. I'm going to say status equals presentation made. That's probably a good one, right? We've got some random stuff in here because it's a okay. So lead. So if the lead status equals presentation made, that means we've met our goal. So either based upon the call result or a record field value, which could be any record field value um, listed here, then we've said we've met our goal, and you're going to see that the goal. We're going to report that the goal was met. Failed criteria is what you would think. If the call result is negative or there is a record field value that's not negative, then it will stop the planned calls. Uh, so all that's managed here. A lot more to come. We've had this bit for a while. We've just added this. We've just added this. We've just added the planned calls. And we really is an area we're going to be focusing more and more on. Okay, so now let's talk about um, how this works its way into list dialing, dial by list. So this is, um, we have a lead view here, which, actually, let me do this as calls first, probably better. So we now have, um, in our custom object for calls, here, we are now packaging a list view called my planned calls. You may not have any other um, views for this object. You may not have been using this object, but this is the custom object for calls. So these are my planned calls. So this is a list that I can dial of my planned calls. Future development here, we're going to be creating a daily call view. I think that's what we named it, daily call view. And the idea for the daily call view is these are planned calls outbound. This actually would go into the probably lowest tier. We're going to assign these to a campaign, and we're going to allow you to rank those campaigns, and this would probably be the last. So the daily call view um, will rank your campaign. So the first one might be inbound calls. So that way we will always put an inbound call at the top of the queue. And if I was, for example, making an outbound call to this first record, Test King, when I'm finished that record, that holding inbound call is going to be the next call that I'm going to take. It's going to be holding for me. It's going to be queued up and holding for me. Second might be web leads, where we would pop the web lead on top of this list. The third might be missed calls. And then the fourth would be these, which are my outbound planned calls, which were always by definition not the first call. So you could also queue up first calls, but you would do that in a separate campaign. So these planned calls are call number 2, call number 4. So these are the planned calls that I had created in a list view. I can select, and this is our dial by list. So I can select the calls. I click dial with Fastcall. We're going to bring this into a Visualforce page. I can start calling. So this is our dial by list. It works with these planned calls from the call object, and really actually all of this is new. The interface is we've had for actually quite a long time, dial by list. So this is dial by list. I can start the call and it's going to go from one record to the other. The interface here is pretty similar. The difference is there'll be a pause option so that you can stop the list. When you end the call to this record here, it's automatically going to start the next call. And then when you end this call, it's going to start this call. And that's dial by list. And there's a pause option here. And dial by list also works. So these are planned calls, but dial by list also works on leads, counts, contacts, opportunities. So I can create a list here, same thing. and then come over here, the button. This is a custom button for dial by list. In this case, it's here, so it's the same thing here for leads. It's only going to pick up a record that has a phone number, though that actually doesn't look like a phone number, so that's not good. But I could pick a better lead list. I didn't pick a list, a great list for the demo. I don't know, maybe this one. We want a list with only phone numbers. Okay, here we go. All the luck I'm having. But that's historically how our dial by list has worked. Is that there was a lead list, and still does. There was a lead list view that you create, and you have your filters on, um, and that filter should include. I have some lead lists that we use as well, but your filter for dialing should include only records with phone numbers. So there would be a filter here that says phone numbers not blank. Um, but that's how one way to use our dial by list is through a list view that you're creating in Salesforce. Now that list could also be a Salesforce campaign, and you can use a Salesforce report to create a campaign, and you can use the campaign to import into a list. That's just how Salesforce does it. And then we can dial that. So we can actually dial a campaign or a report and a list, so they all sort of have some relation between them all. I am in Lightning here. We also like, and I wanted to make sure I pointed this out, we really like dial by list in console. Um, and what that's going to give us is we're in spring 2020 here. Come on, Salesforce. Come on. Come on, Salesforce. Okay, so Salesforce is being a little slow right now. But we really like dial by list in console view, because what console view is going to give us is the let's see if I can, maybe I can shake it loose and oh, there we go, console. Oh, you know what, this might be, oh, you know what, since I didn't know this else, this is actually this is actually classic console. This happened to me the other day and I sort of wondered about that. Surprise it comes up in my Lightning menu. That might be a bug for Salesforce. Here's Sales Console. So okay, weird. So Sales Console, dial by list also works great. The difference is I have my list view here and I have my record view here. In order to select the record, I do have to come over to the table mode and I have to select all my records here. And then I can come over to um, dial by Fastcall and I can dial the list in console, which is a really a great way to work inside of console. I did actually by accident, though I'm glad I did, because I wanted to say dial by list does work on classic and it is great in classic console. This is classic console. Dial by list in regular classic is okay, with console's better because the same idea, I can come over here, I can select all my records, and then there's a custom button here. That will start dialing my list. But the nice thing, again, the nice thing is I have my list here and I've got my detail there. So that's a real nice. So console is a real nice interface, whether you're in classic console or Lightning console. Um, I do like both. So there is reporting as well on your planned calls and your completed planned calls. Again, we're telling you the date that the call was made and the um, how many days it took you to whether you made the call on the planned date or not, and you'll see that in the call record. So I mentioned a few minutes ago, this is a Salesforce task. We create the Salesforce task. We have the option to not create a Salesforce task, but all that is still here. Um, the planned call is on our call record. There is a relationship, obviously, between the call and the task, but that data is on the call record. And you may not, if you're new to Fast Call, it's all new to you. But if you're used to Fast Call, you might be used to just looking at the Salesforce task, but here you're looking at the call record. So again, here's the planned start time and then the actual start time, and then the call goal number. As I mentioned before, this is an area that we are going to be working on quite a bit. So you will see continuous improvement here. I mentioned the next um, two capabilities that you'll see are the daily call view, where we are resorting that call in that list in real time based upon the campaigns that you designate as a priority: inbound calls, web leads, missed calls, outbound calls. Um, And then we're also going to see a reassignment rule based upon these call goals. So I set up a call goal that said call 5 times in 5 weeks. After those 5 weeks, if those calls are not made and the criteria are not met, the record can be reassigned. So, for example, if I own a record uh, and I'm not, hello, and I'm not, and I didn't make the call that was set in my goal, the lead can be reassigned to a queue, so that I'll lose ownership of and then that lead can be reassigned to another user. So those are the two next updates that we're going to see here. Um, okay, hopefully the video was helpful. Shoot us an email, info@fastcall.com if you have any questions, and we look forward to your feedback.